Hi, I'm Juliette Wolf-Robin, National Executive Director of American Photographic Artists. APA is an association of professional photographers, mostly working with ad agencies, brands, corporations, or editorially. Our mission is to help photographers succeed, and we do that through community, education, inspiration, and advocacy. Scope is a monthly webinar series focused on diversity and inclusion, and you can watch past monthly episodes on our YouTube channel at American Photographic Artists, or sign up for future programs on apanational.org's events page. APA is now hosting webinars pretty much weekly, so you can find out about that on our events page. Tomorrow, Natalie Gordon will be in conversation with AB and DM. And Thursday, we have Natasha Johnson, Cara Romero, and Morgan DeLuna in a special Culture and Cause program. They will discuss their creative process and activism. The event is free to APA members, but open to anyone. And the donations that are being accepted are on behalf of the 3 youth organizations supported by the photographers. Today's Scope program is moderated by Oriana Koren, an activist themselves. They are a photographer, writer, researcher, and they are co-founder of Authority Collective and co-author of the Photo Bill of Rights. APA welcomes Oriana, and they will discuss the value of peer-to-peer mentorship, and we will allow questions to come in during or after, or however they decide they would like it to be. So welcome, Oriana.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Juliette. It's a pleasure to be in conversation this afternoon with 2 artists and human beings I deeply admire. Danielle Scruggs is a photographer, writer, and photo editor for Getty Images based in Chicago, Illinois. Danielle is a board member of Authority Collective, a general member of Diversify.Photo, and was a woman photograph mentor in 2018 to 2019. Rebecca Aranda is a Mexican-American documentary photographer based in Los Angeles with a focus on performance arts in film, TV, and theater, and educational organizations. They have shot a wide variety of live events and documentary work. Rebecca is proud to be a mentor with Las Fotos Project, working with teenage photographers in East LA. So before we jump into conversation, I wanted to just briefly let the audience know a little bit about my own personal experience with mentorship and peer-to-peer mentorship, and how I ended up incorporating it into my larger photographic practice. So prior to being an assignment photographer, I worked as a wedding photographer in Chicago, and I was mentored by 2 women of color. Sonia Martin, who is based in the southern Illinois suburbs, and Sean Saavedra, who was a photographer who had relocated to Chicago from Boston. I met Sean through Craigslist, and I think I also met Sonia through Craigslist. I had not had mentorship prior to meeting these 2 women. I went to art school, but I didn't really have any sense of how to build a business or how to really build a sustainable photographic practice. They both took me under their wing and really guided me. Sonia pushed me to start my own wedding photography business. Shung helped me learn the ins and outs of good customer service and just how to run a successful wedding photography business. And that never really left me. I was always really grateful for the ways in which they provided me with information and resources that I wasn't going to be able to get really from anyone. So by the time I moved to Los Angeles about six years ago to start a career in editorial photography, I knew that I was going to find a way to incorporate mentorship into my own practice. Just because it helped me to succeed in ways that I had not really thought about until I got that sort of support via community. So I'm going to start by asking you both, when and why did you seek mentorship?
Okay, I guess I can go first. Let's see, when and why did I seek out mentorship? I guess it started at the beginning of my career, because I studied journalism originally in college, and I didn't really think that I could make a career out of photography until late in my in my college studies. And so I would say probably like the first mentors that I had were college professors, Harley Little, Michael B. Platt, both of whom sadly have passed on now. But the two of them were really encouraging of me as far as, kind of telling me how to get together a portfolio because I had no idea, or like how to kind of like talk about my work from like an artistic standpoint. And really just the both of them just like encouraged me to like just keep making work and to apply to, art school. And, both of them really kind of showed me the ropes as far as like, you actually can make a career out of this. Like, so it depends. So, at that time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to lean more into fine art photography, if I wanted to go like the more editorial or like documentary route. But both of them really encouraged me to, encourage, like to step into like visual storytelling and like you actually can make a career out of it. So yeah.
I love that. That's a nice story. For me, my very, very, very first experience with mentorship would probably be when I was in college, when there was a grad student named Donovan Sherman. You might be watching this, I don't know. But he was in the drama department and I was an English and drama major. So I have absolutely zero professional educational experience with photography itself. I did not go to photography school. But just from that early experience, Donovan was just so supportive of me and was just like an open book in a way that I had not really experienced before. And it was so exciting to see that if I was excited to learn and made a connection with someone, that they would be willing to share with me and help me. Which is just, it was such a new sensation for me because I had always done like everything like all by myself up until that point. It was like you're familiar with that feeling. I'm like a very like scrappy self-starter kind of personality. And I don't tend to actively seek out help myself. And it has to come around like in a roundabout way. And then I'm like, oh, I actually need that. So for me, my photography career, it was something that I was just doing where I was juggling lots of different roles. I was trying out acting, writing, directing, playwriting, photography. And I met Oriana when Oriana moved to Los Angeles. And just like you met your mentors on a Craigslist, it was a Facebook marketplace transaction, something like that, where they were selling some old photography equipment. And we immediately hit it off. And not too long after we became friends, I mean, it just became so clear that Oriana was, number one, a wealth of information, and number two, just super willing to share. And I noticed that not only did we foster a really strong like mentor-mentee relationship where Oriana taught me everything that they knew about wedding photography, editorial photography, like everything, to the extent that I really think that Oriana is my greatest teacher like throughout my career. And I mean, you taught me everything. I wouldn't be here without Oriana. I also noticed as I progressed along with my sort of mentee, mentorship, best friend relationship with Oriana, that they were an open book to everybody. And I found that very inspirational. Now, not just everybody in the sense of like anybody who crossed their path, because Oriana is pretty selective about where they spend their energy. But I think I was really inspired by the way that Oriana really prioritizes women of color and non-binary people of color. And if there is any woman of color or non-binary person of color, especially a young person who like doesn't understand the ropes of the industry, as if they come to Oriana with like an open heart and lots of curiosity, Oriana will share everything. And that's kind of how I approach things now too, where now that I've built up my own wealth of knowledge, it's really important for me to just, to demystify the whole thing, because the photography industry can seem very mysterious and closed off when you're coming to it as an outsider. And I think that's like bullshit. Like you shouldn't be gatekeeping this industry. It should be open to anyone with a camera and the talent and the work that can back it up, you know, they should be able to get work. That was a lot to unpack.
No, I think that's one, thank you. I think that's really the spirit of this discussion. When APA approached me to do a scope, they asked me what I wanted to talk about, and immediately I was like, peer-to-peer mentorship. I want to talk about like teaching people and learning and sharing things with others. Because so much of my joy as a photographer has come from that sort of community building. And it also comes from the fact that I had to navigate the industry for so long without the tools, resources, and just general knowledge that I should have had access to. And it's not lost on me that the people who consistently provide me with that are other people of color. So when I moved here, I moved here literally off of the recommendation of a handful of people, but I contacted a photographer whose work I really admire, Bethany Mollenkoff. Just got in her DMs and was like, hey, I'm coming to LA. I really love your work. I hope this isn't weird, but like, if you would like to meet up for like coffee, I would just like to understand like what your experience of LA has been, how it's been for you as a photographer. She took off, she was working at the LA Times at the time. She took her entire lunch break to kind of show me around downtown LA and like really give me the nitty gritty of what it was like working, not just as a photographer, but specifically as a Black person having to navigate the industry. And there's just, for me, the way that we're all able to have really honest and open conversations about what it's like to navigate the industry as people of color, as marginalized folks, is really, really, or has been really integral to my success. And I think that that's the case with anyone who has participated in some form of peer-to-peer mentorship. Part of the reason I'm focusing specifically on peer-to-peer mentorship versus, I think, mentorship as we know it, which is usually like an established older photographer, prestige photographer, sort of takes you under their wing and apprentices you and like teaches you all of these things. We don't have access to that. A lot of that has to do with just social dynamics of how information gets passed on in the industry. There's a lot of racial dynamics to that too. We don't tend to be in the circles where this sort of information, this really important, vital information is circled around. So we typically have to rely on one another to learn how to be photographers and how to navigate the industry. I'm really curious in terms of how mentorship has helped you to build a career. What sort of knowledge, information, resources have you both been able to obtain by participating in these peer-to-peer mentorships? Oh, you're muted.
I'm unmuted, yeah. I would say for me, I really just kind of learned how to navigate the industry as a whole through other people that I was like coming up with. So like a lot of my career has been really through trial and error, really. And so a lot of the times, like I've just like ended up like reaching out to other people and just like asking them questions and maybe being a little annoying, but like ultimately I think it's like worked out for the best. But yeah, like I would also say, you know, I learned a lot from you, O, about like specifically how to talk about my work, like as far as like getting editorial work, because like in addition to working as a photo editor, like I still work like as a freelance photographer. And it was really from you that like I learned like, oh, okay, this is like the best way to approach other editors and like talking about my work, and like, oh, this is like a way to kind of like present my work as well. And yeah, like I would say like, you know, and then also like you taught me that I needed to approach a lot more people than I had been, and like not worry so much about rejection, but just like you know, get your stuff out there and like actually like just let people know what it is you're working on, and like don't be afraid to show people personal projects so like you can still get assignments from that as well. Um, and yeah, I would say like I learned a lot from you. I've learned a lot from everyone in Authority Collective as well. I'm so happy that that connection, like I was able to be a part of that connection and be a part of that community, because like I've learned so much from every single person involved in Authority Collective, and it's made me, I feel like it's made me a stronger photographer, it's made me a stronger photo editor. um, and it's also kind of given me a sense of community, which can be kind of hard to come across when you work in photography, because like it can be very I mean, it can be very lonely. Like, if I can be frank, like it can be a very lonely field to work in, especially if you're, so to kind of like break down all the tiers, if you're a person of color, especially if you're a woman of color, especially if you are a Black woman of color, or, you know, if you're perceived to be like a woman or femme somehow, like it can be really lonely. And but being part of that community, um, just really helped me feel like a little less alone in this industry. And it's also like really encouraged me to like really be for other people coming up, for like younger people coming up, like who I needed when I was younger. So yeah, my long-winded answer to that, but yeah.
I love that answer. For me, I mean, same. I learned a lot from Authority Collective. I learned a lot from Oriana. A phrase that I was thinking about coming up to this talk was the phrase, "You don't know what you don't know." Um, where, you know, like you literally can't even conceive of like all the resources that are out there if you're coming from outside of the industry or outside of the like photography school apprenticeship model or whatever. Being a self-taught photographer, it's like I could teach myself up to a certain point. Like I could teach myself like the technical aspects of photography. I could teach myself composition, editing, you know, equipment, all that stuff. But then once I had all that, it's like, what do I do with it? I had no idea. Like you just post on Instagram and hope someone sees you and hires you. Like, and as much as, I mean, I have gotten random work from people randomly seeing me or knowing me. So much of what I learned from peer-to-peer mentorship has just been like, oh, like I didn't realize there were like lists of editors with like their contact, like so many editors have their contact information just freely available. There's stuff like a photo editor, which Oriana showed me many years ago, where, you know, this guy just sifts through all the different promotional materials that people send to photo editors. And I was like, oh, people are making promotional materials? Like, I didn't know you could do that. And, you know, just finding out about stuff like, yeah, how to pitch, how to write an email, how to negotiate rate, like what is a fair rate? All this stuff is like, again, I feel like it's very purposely like shrouded in mystery, and people kind of intentionally uphold a lot of gatekeeping, as the expression goes, because I think that there is a certain willingness to kind of like take advantage of new naive photographers, you know, but if you don't know what going rates are, if you don't know how to do an email or how to do your negotiations or whatever, you'll just take the very first thing that comes up, like, oh, cool, yeah, I can do $200 for a portrait for, you know, this major publication or whatever. Or like I said about the picture that I took for that book that we were talking about earlier, I should have renegotiated the rights for that, because the first contract that they had me sign was just like at the beginning of my career. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And that's another thing too, like with copyright and stuff like that, that I think that that's actually something that a lot of photographers and photo editors need to have more understanding of. It's how copyright and licensing works. And thanks to Oriana, like I'm now in the position where I have the knowledge where I can explain things to photo editors. Like me, who's not supposed to have this knowledge, I'm like, this is how it goes. Like you have to hire me at this rate for this usage. this is what usage means. These are the kind of files you can get. Like, you can't just automatically get high-res downloads of everything and use it in perpetuity forever. So yeah, that's basically what I keep thinking, is that you just don't know what you don't know. And what I love about peer-to-peer mentorship is it just opens up those doors and demystifies the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate this sentiment of not only the fact that peer-to-peer mentorship demystifies what can be a really murky industry to navigate, but also this idea of just like general support of like, here I have someone who is probably like at the same level I'm at, maybe a little bit further ahead in their career, but we're like navigating this together. There have been so many moments in which I've been able to reach out to Rebecca or reach out to Danielle and be like, hey, like, can you assist me on a gig? Or do you have this piece of equipment I could borrow? Or like, you know, like, I think like I've got too many shoots this month and I can't really handle them. Would you be interested in taking the shoot off of my hand? The thing that I think is like the most beneficial about incorporating a practice of mentorship into your larger photographic practice is how it helps to break down these walls of competition that seem to be really, really important to the photographic industry, because it also helps to bolster this myth of meritocracy, that the people who are working the most because they're the most talented in our industry. And we don't really think about the ways in which that's not actually the case. The people who work the most are the people who are the best connected. Part of the reason I started sharing a lot of the information that I was getting was because I had like built a relationship with a agent just based off of a portfolio review. And she was really generous in giving me a ton of information on like how to get myself started and established in LA. And as I was talking to my other colleagues, specifically my colleagues of color, we all started to recognize that like a lot of the things that I was hearing from this agent were the things, the information, the resources, the knowledge that you get when you have an agent, but it's almost impossible to get an agent as a person of color. So I'm really curious in terms of participating in peer-to-peer mentorship. So, you know, what have your experiences been like both as a mentee and as a mentor? Because I know you both mentor, and I'm curious to know if your experiences as a mentee might have pushed you towards becoming a mentor yourself.
Yeah, I would say, let's see. I guess like I've always kind of vacillated between like being a mentor and then being a mentee as well. Like I feel like there's always still more for me to learn. And then like as I learn those things, like I want to make sure to pass that on to other people as much as I can, because like there's no point in me hoarding knowledge. And like again, to be like very frank, like there are still not nearly enough Black women and just like in general, like women of color, like non-binary people of color working in this industry. And I don't want to be the only one, you know, like I don't, like I've been like the only and the first in like a lot of places that I've been in, and I don't like that. Like I want there to be more. And so like anything I can do to make the business side of things and like all of it like less opaque, like that's what I'm gonna do. And so yeah, like I've had like a lot of well, not a lot, but you know, like in general, like I've had like younger photographers like reach out to me and you know just like ask for like general advice, or you know they're like, oh, like I got this assignment, but like is this like a good rate, or like how, you know, how should I like approach it? Like I was actually just having like a talk with like another photographer not too long ago. And you know, I was bringing up to him like, you know, like you like contracts, like have a paper trail, like, and he was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. And I was like, yes, like get everything in writing, like have a paper trail, like it protects everyone involved. So like stuff like that, like if I like anything I can do to like pass on the knowledge that I've gotten over the years from other peers, like from other people, like I want to make sure that like I'm passing that on to other people like as much as possible, because like that's how that's like one way to like keep bringing in other people and like kind of like just getting rid of this like idea of like there can only be one or like there can only be a couple. Like I really want to help make this industry like as equitable as possible. And it really does start, I think, like at that base level of like who's around you, like who can you work with who's like already around you? How can you build each other up? How can you lift yourselves up? And um and yeah, just like kind of getting rid of that whole idea of like you're my competition. It's like no, like we're like there is more than enough to go around. Like there's not like, and like a lot of people like to make us think that there's like not enough to go around, and you know, kind of like operating from this like from like the scarcity model, but that's not the case. Like there's more than enough for everyone. So it's like how do we get to a point where everyone even knows like how to get access like to those resources and to those assignments and to those jobs.
Yeah, that's totally true. I really like what you said about how there's no point in hoarding knowledge. That I like, that's another really good phrase, hoarding knowledge. So true. And I think that's, again, really encouraged, like you said, by the competitive aspect to this industry and the scarcity mindset where you're just like, oh no, like if I find out this one thing, I have to keep it as my like secret trip to get work. I think another thing I was thinking of that I just want to mention briefly too is that so I always make it my duty too, because I am very like pale skinned, to not just think about my own career, but to always be thinking about the career of other women of color, especially those, you know, who are Black women, Black people, people who have darker complexions than me, people who have accents, where whenever I find myself like in an environment where there are other people with me who are women of color, and, you know, or I feel like they might be getting less respect or being talked down to or condescended to, I always make it my duty to put myself like in front, to be like, you can't talk to them like that, or like, this is my assistant, you know, this is someone who I trust, in whatever ways that I can. And similar to that, I mean, it's always so interesting seeing the way that the different like the intersections of oppression play out like over and over again in the industry. And another one that I think of all the time is like classism, because this is an industry that relies on like expensive equipment, and, you know, being able to like fly out at a moment's notice to here or there. And just there's always lots of assumptions that people make about your resources and what you're able to do at every level, I find, from not just like photo editors, but like other photographers, people who want to hire you and stuff. And it's really annoying because I think it comes along with that of it seeming like, oh, this is just like a fun thing that you like to do with like your extra money. You like to buy cameras and then you can just shoot something for whatever rate you want. And something that Oriana and I don't know about you, Danielle, but we've had to like emphasize over and over again, like, this is our job, this is our career, this is how I pay rent, like, this is how I buy food, like, this is not my fun money. And right, and I do think that for, you know, a lot of those top photographers, that might not be the case. That might be their fun money. This is just a thing to do on the side. It's like something they get to do that they're like lucky to do. But yeah, it takes a lot of hard work, and so much of what I try to do in conversations with people is to remind people, like, this is a job, it's a hard job, and we deserve to be compensated for our equipment, our resources, our time. So back to the mentoring thing, because I do mentor with Las Fotos Project, which is a really great organization in East LA. I'm currently mentoring 2 wonderful students right now, as the semester goes on, working with these kids with their documentary projects. And something that I think about working with teenagers is that a lot of times teenagers are very like sure of themselves in a way that I find very endearing, where I remember being like that, like, yeah, I got it. Like, I know it. I know everything. And I'm like, okay, adjust your shutter speed. They're like, so what? Which again, just always reminds me, like, you really don't know what you don't know. If you have a camera, you've been messing with it, you're like, I know how to take pictures. And so I really like just breaking down the process of, all that, the technical stuff that I learned over the years. But then also letting them know, like, hey, like, I also come from a low income background. I was also born and raised in East LA. The fact that I can make a living with my camera, the fact that I can pay my rent, like, with my creative process is, like, mind blowing. And I always tell them, it's possible and you can totally do it. And there's a path to do it. And if they need anything at all, like any kind of resources, if they need me to look over pictures or help craft an email, like, I'm an open book for them. Because there's so many ways to make an omelet. I'm making sense.
I love that analogy. There are so many ways to make an omelet. I thank you for bringing up class, because that was definitely something I wanted to talk about, particularly, and I think you've actually kind of summed it up talking about your experiences as mentors. The thing that has been really, really amazing about peer-to-peer mentorship is, as someone who has lived through and has had to navigate financial precarity, has been broke most of their life, like even when they are going on assignment across the world, etc. It has felt so good to be able to talk to other people without judgment about where I'm at financially and what it is I'm currently navigating. And also just this, like, again, I think I keep coming back to supporting community, but that's really the thing that has made peer-to-peer mentorship so special for me, is that in sharing resources and in sharing knowledge, I'm building these deep relationships that have not only helped me to feel more included in my industry, but, like, these relationships also buoy me outside of work. We're all on various group chats. And, like, there was a message that came to a group chat that Danielle and I are on a couple weeks ago, where one of our colleagues who lives in Hawaii was just like, I'm not really getting a lot of work right now. And I don't really feel good about it. Like, is it me? And within like 5 or 10 minutes, a ton of us were like, it's totally not you. Like, we just survived a pandemic. It's really hard. Like, we're not getting work either also. That was not something that was a part of my general landscape before I engaged in peer-to-peer mentorship. And so I'm curious to know, prior to participating in this practice of mentoring, what were your views of the industry? Did the industry feel like it was a safe place for you to navigate? I had a feeling.
No. No. Like, no. Because and I want to go back to something Rebecca just said when you were talking about how, it was important, for you to, like, tell the teens that you're mentoring, like, hey, like, I grew up in East LA, like, I'm, Mexican American, like, and I think it's really important for people coming up to, like, see other people who look like them that they can relate to doing the kind of work that they want to do. Like, if you grow up not seeing that, like, if you grow up, like, looking through magazines or, like, looking through newspapers, looking at TV, and, the dominant image of a photojournalist is a straight white guy in, like, some ugly vest, like, halfway around the world or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and so you think, like, oh, I mean, I like photography. I like taking pictures, but I don't know if I can be a professional at this, because, like, I don't see anyone who fucking looks like me. Oh, sorry for, but it's like, I don't see anyone who looks like me. So it's just like, I guess this can be like a cool hobby on the side. And it's like, I never really again, like it wasn't really until I was like almost done with college where like I had like, you know, these teachers, like these really amazing teachers at an HBCU, by the way, like these are like all Black men who, you know, were like looking at my work and saying, no, like there's something here. And like, you actually can make a living at this. And, you know, something else that they did was like, they brought in like other working photographers, like to like the different classes that I was in as well. And so it wasn't really until then that like I saw like, oh, like this is something I actually can do. And like it, but it wasn't even, it just didn't even cross my mind that that was something I could do until like that point in time. And then even after that though, like it was really difficult for me to think of myself as a photographer, like as an image maker, as like a visual storyteller. Like it took me a really long time to own that. But I do think though, like more so with like the peer-to-peer mentorship, that's like what really kind of made me realize like, no, like you can own that, like you can call yourself that, like you have, and also like you have valuable experience that you can share with other people as well. Because actually, to be truthful, it took me a long time to own that part as well. Like it took me a long time to own the fact that like you have valuable information that you can share with others, and by sharing it with others, you know, again, like you can make things a little more equitable and like make it so that like you're not constantly the only one or one of the few. So so yeah, like I would say like initially before like, you know, finding mentors and like kind of finding a community, it was really difficult for me to like kind of see myself as like part of the industry. And but yeah, being a mentor and then also being a mentee like really helped me kind of get a little more comfortable like owning that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really resonate with that. I think, you know, as photographers, we're probably all visual learners. that's, that's something that I bring up with my mentees a lot is like, it's really hard for me to believe something until I see it. Like I need to understand it and see it in person for me to be like, oh, okay, that's how it works.
Right, right.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, the photography industry, yeah, the photography industry seemed completely impenetrable and mysterious and intimidating before peer-to-peer mentorship, before meeting with other photographers, particularly women of color, who were doing the work and getting out there, getting published, getting paid. And I was like, oh snap, like it's really possible. And I think something good for me too is this conference I've been going to for a few years now called the Real Life Conference that Oriana introduced me to. It happens up in Canada, and it's just like a very loving, warm group of mostly women photographers and non-binary photographers. There's women of color, but there's also at the Real Life Conference a lot of older women and a lot of women who have had families and like had kids and also continued to have their careers. And all of their careers were so varied and vibrant and different and interesting. And I was just like, wow, because you really don't see that much. People don't talk about that much. People don't let you know when you're young, like, by the way, you can do a lot of different things. Like you can have kids and you can have a career. You can be an older person working in this industry where, you know, I think that a lot of creative industries, having tried my hand at a lot of creative things, whether it's acting or writing or whatever, like it's always going to be the hot, like 30 under 30. People are always going to be championing like the young people who are like young, sexy, and skinny, and they're out there, they're doing things. But doing the Real Life Conference was really awesome because it showed me like, oh, this can be like a long lasting career that can last like my whole life if I wanted to. Like it doesn't just have to be something that I can only do until I turn 30, then I have to give it up and do a desk job. And similarly with the, you know, just like all the other creative industries, they're all dominated by white men. It was really, you know, it's difficult to grow up like looking up to people, all the writers and entertainers and photographers, and thinking like, well, if only I was someone completely different, I could be successful. And what I love about peer-to-peer mentorship is that it's basically like friendship, like, but like in a working way, like where you're doing the similar things and your colleagues, and you're also helping each other. And I think that what's good about that is that with friends, like really good friends are going to see you for who you are and champion you in all the ways that you're like unique and special. And that is what we really need more of in this industry, is instead of people like trying to copy what's been done before, or even like someone hiring you and saying, can you do what this person did before? It's like, no. We should all be shining our like own unique, lovely light. And I feel like it shines the most when I'm in conversation with other photographers like you two.
Yes. So there's some questions coming in. I want to answer those. And actually the question that just came in is in conversation with the question that I'm about to ask you both. So, and it's kind of a twofold question. One, can you think of an example, a concrete example in which peer-to-peer mentorship helped you to navigate an assignment, a gig, something in your career? And then two, can you give one like concrete way photographers who have not engaged in peer mentorship, and I'm subtweeting specifically white photographers, how they can start to build mentorship specifically with their colleagues of color in the industry?
Let's see. So one way peer mentorship helped me, well, actually, this was something that I guess like we didn't know that that's what we were doing, but that's what we were doing. So when I used to live in DC for a really long time, and eventually, like I just kind of, started seeing more work by like different Black artists like within DC. So photographers, illustrators, painters, graphic designers. And so eventually like we all just started kind of, and we were all like very frustrated with like not getting hired to do things and like not getting in shows and galleries. And so, at one point we were just all like, why don't we just make our own show? And so like, why don't we just like, because we have space, we have the work, so let's just put on our own show. And so like we did a couple of shows like that where we just like set up in a house. Eventually like we did another show where we set up in a friend's gallery, and yeah, we just ended up kind of like doing our own thing. And so like yeah, like I guess like at the time like we didn't know what to call that, but that was peer-to-peer mentorship, because we were helping each other like curate work. Like we were saying like, okay, like actually I think this is a stronger photo for you to show, and here's like people we can hit up to like publicize it, things like that. So yeah, I would say like in that regard, like it helped me kind of navigate that that scene. Because I mean that would be like a whole other talk though, like navigating the fine art world and navigating the whole gallery world. That's like a whole other. But yeah, but yeah, definitely a peer-to-peer mentorship helped with that. And then I would say like one concrete thing that white photographers can do to like support their people of color colleagues. Just don't be stingy with information, like let people know what your rates are. Like if you know that you're getting like $1,000 a day, and but someone else is told like, well, the day rate's 500, like tell them that you got 1,000. Like tell them like what you actually get paid, because that was actually something that another photographer did for me, and I'm very grateful to him. When I had to like build a quote for a different job, he like just straight up told me like, this is what I would charge for XYZ. Like he didn't even hesitate to tell me things like that. So I would say, yeah, don't be stingy with information. Just like tell people your rates. If you have like a contact, like that, it's okay to share that. You're not going to lose work. Like I can't tell you like how many times like I've, turned down jobs because like either I was too busy or like I just couldn't do it. And I would, give the photo editor, I usually try to give photo editors like a list of like, 2 or 3 other people that they can contact and hit up. And I've still gotten hired later. So, you know, like, you're not going to lose work if you do that. And if anything, that's just like another way that you're going to build community and connections as well, because people are going to see, oh, I got recommended because this person suggested me. Like that, like that's not going to hurt you in the long run. If anything, like, that's just going to like broaden your connections with everyone within your community.
Yeah, totally true. I mean, I think there's so many examples I could think of where somebody else helped me. I really, and again, it's funny to go over all that in my head and have that contrast with that image that I have of myself as like a very independent, independent person. I've never needed anyone's help. But I mean, I built my whole career off of like other people helping me. And that's awesome. And I try to return the favor as much as I can. One thing I could think of concretely is when I was like redoing my websites, where like, I mean, at the very beginning, it was like amateur hour. It was pretty embarrassing how my website looked now that I think about it. Again, I just had no freaking clue. I was like, I have a website, I have some photos on it, like, ta-da. And I think I had like every picture I'd ever taken on there. And becoming friends with Oriana Koren very gently was like, here's my website. You can poke around, take a look, notice how I put pictures together. You can see how I write about my work. You can see how I write about myself. And I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, encouraged me to go out and research, like, look at people in the bylines of newspapers and magazines, look them up, look at their websites, see how they're writing their bios, see how they're sequencing their work. How many pictures do they have on their website? What does it look like? Can you click around on it? And I was like, oh, okay. And then like the website design, like the way that you present your portfolio, that's so crucial, because that can be the difference between someone thinking, you know, again, your total amateur hour versus this is like a professional person who has really, you know, carefully considered the way they present their work. And it's in line with these other, you know, photographers that are putting in all their submissions to people. So, I mean, my website's pretty sticky now, and I think it's because of Oriana. And I'm very glad that even if someone goes and just spends like 3 seconds clicking around, they immediately know my point of view, the kind of photography that I do, and that's all thanks to Oriana. I also think that one way that you can help people, just off the top of my head, if you are a white, pale person like myself, something you can do is just reaching out to the youth in your community. Sort of like what I do with Las Fotos. You can look and see wherever you live if there's similar organizations, maybe even the YMCA, YWCA, or whatever. And if there's not any organizations, which I doubt, you might want to check in with Diversify.Photo, Women Photograph, and the Authority Collective, and they could have some good recommendations for where you live for organizations to get involved with. You can start something yourself, like post on Facebook, post on Craigslist, say, I'm an experienced photographer. If there's any young photographers out there who want to learn more about photography, let's schedule some coffee and have a chat or whatever. Now we can schedule coffee dates again and the people are vaccinated. Because that's just, I think that's going to be your go-to place to start, because young people are going to be more hungry for knowledge and more impressed with what you have to say, and they're going to be so hungry for your knowledge and anything that you have for them. So go out and find the young people.
Very much in agreement. So we have 3 questions, and Rebecca actually sort of started to answer it. But this question comes from Martine Severin, and she asks, do you have suggestions on how one can go about starting a peer mentorship group? Which I think is a good question for this bunch, since 2 of us are founding members of the Authority Collective and 1 of us is currently a sitting board member. To echo what Rebecca said, just do it. The Authority Collective came about because we were having a difficult time figuring out how to navigate the industry as people of color, women of color. And we had a day-long symposium, which was just a conversation about how we could best support one another. And the solution we came up with was a collective. I think that collectives are a lot easier, peer mentorship groups are a lot easier to put together than folks think. It's really just a group of people getting together, sharing resources and knowledge. So if you've got even 3 or 4 people who are interested in that, you've got a peer mentorship group. The next question is from Carolina, and she asked, any suggestions for finding mentorships and not taking up space that is needed for younger POC photographers? There's a lot of shame in never being able to figure things out and having to always ask the white photographers, but yet never feeling seen, if that makes sense. Thoughts?
Well, definitely makes sense. So just want to affirm that. I mean, I would say, so I think like a lot of the ways that people talk about kind of like emerging photographers is usually conflated with young, and that's not necessarily the case. Like you can be up and coming, you can be an emerging photographer and not be in your teens or 20s. And so I would say, if you do come across like a peer mentorship group, or, if you're thinking of, if you have like people in mind that you want to reach out to, like, I don't think you would be taking up space from younger people, because like, I think like there's always something to learn, like as like we continue to navigate and like as we continue to like grow within this industry. So I would say like, yeah, like if you end up coming across like a peer mentorship group, or if you had an idea to like reach out to other people, like I would say like still go for it, and like don't think that you're taking up space from someone. Like if anything, like y'all can learn from each other. And so like, a younger person can have something to teach you, vice versa. Like you have something that you can teach younger photographers as well. And I think it kind of gets to a point that I was talking about earlier too, where it's like, I think it's really important for people of color within this industry to recognize that like we all have something valuable to share, even if it doesn't always get appreciated or acknowledged. But like you bring something valuable to the table with like what you're doing. And so, and it's easy to lose sight of that, like, trust me, huh? But you do have something valuable to share, and you're not taking up space. Like if you're like looking for mentorship, like if anything, like, mentorship can be kind of like this ongoing process. And it's like, you can be like 70 years old and still need, a mentor, and like, or you could be like 19 just starting out and still need a mentor. So it's like, it's more so a case of like, what is it that you want to learn? How do you want to evolve? And, you're not taking up space, or you are, but like not in a bad way. So.
Yeah, I think it's important that because this industry can be really ageist, people tend to age out of being emerging, or at least that's sort of the conversation. It's important that we're in conversation with people who have been in the industry longer than us, and vice versa. We really need to be learning to build relationships with older photographers. Doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you've been doing it for a long time. There's a lot that we can learn from you, and vice versa. And I don't think it should ever be a question of taking up space, although I will affirm that depending on who you talk to about mentorship, it can often feel like you are being made to take up space. And I think if that's the general feeling that you're getting, that's probably not a person or a group of people you want to pursue mentorship with. There are going to be photographers who understand, or who at least are trying to educate themselves on what it means to navigate the industry when you're older but emerging. So I'm hoping that you find spaces that affirm that for you soon.
I hope so too. And I also think, we're all involved with the Authority Collective in one way or another. I recommend, Kelly, you should sign up for the Authority Collective newsletters. They're super informative. Like every email that I get from them, it's like opening up like a little treasure box of like, here's some grants, here's some things to apply to. You should pitch this person. There's this thing. There's a scholarship. I'm like, wow. Because again, it's like I have no idea that those things are happening unless someone goes out of their way and tells me that. You know, doing things like this is a great way to find mentors. You know, you can make a personal connection with somebody over a workshop, networking event, Zoom call, whatever. And, you know, if you like their work, they like your work, like it's as simple as like an Instagram message or an email or something that's been progressed to something more. I think, you know, it's helpful for me coming from, again, like quote unquote, outside the industry, that I have just no concept of what like as mentorship is supposed to be like. All I know is that I have some friends who do photography just like me, and they are keen to help me. And then I'm always making new friends, and then I help them, and then they help me. And it's just like an ongoing process of constant friendship.
Yes.
And then also on a note about the taking up space, it reminds me of how I just had my second baby. And sometimes parents who have more than one kid like fret, like, oh no, like what if this means that I'm gonna love the first one less or the second one less? And it's like, no, there's always just like more. Like the love just increases.
Yes.
And never decreases. And I think it's going to be the same thing for community building and genuine mentorship relationships.
This is our last question, I think. I don't see any more. And I think we've kind of answered it, but Jill Broussard asks, as a white person, how can I best support and build relationships with peers of color? I will say self-education is really important. I would say before you venture into relationships with people of color, it's really important for you to educate yourself on whiteness, white supremacy, how you can be just a better and more decent person while divesting from white supremacy. There's no way to get around those conversations when you are in relationship with people of color, because how we live the world, the oppressions that we have to navigate on a regular basis are a part of every facet of our lives. So you want to get to a point where you feel comfortable having what are constantly called uncomfortable conversations around race and identity. After that, I would echo what Danielle echoed a little bit earlier, which is share resources. A large part of the reason it's difficult to navigate the industry as a person of color is because our white colleagues don't tend to share resources and information with us the way we share it with one another. So get into the habit and the mindset that you are a part of a community. You are not a lone wolf. You did not do this by yourself. And that there is a huge benefit to building community and sharing things with other people. Rebecca, Danielle, any additional thoughts?
Oh, no, I think that pretty much sums it up. Especially the self-education part, definitely. Trying to think of how to put this. So
Can I okay.
oh, yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh no, it's
no,
just yeah.
The main thing that I thought of was to go out of your way to find artists of color and to champion their work and share them and make connections with them. You know, it's so easy to do this on Instagram, but you can also do this, you know, just outside of that by, you know, searching around on the internet or for your favorite publication, looking at the bylines. And every time you come across one who's a person of color, especially a woman of color, like, I mean, I do this, you know, I just make sure to go out of my way to notice them, remember them, follow their work. Because that, you know, the default is the straight white male photographer. And I think that the only way that we're going to get more recognition for the alternate perspectives that are out there is by people saying, no, you know what? I want more of that photographer. I really like that photographer. And, you know, kind of understanding for yourself that, you know, so-and-so getting more jobs, not taking away from you. if anything, it's just adding to the wealth of imagery that is out there that has yet to be taken. You know, so many photographs that aren't even made yet, that I'm so excited to see in the years to come from all the artists of color that we have coming out.
And, yeah, and just the last thing I was gonna say too is like what O was just saying, self-education is really important. Like don't put that burden on people of color to like educate you about certain things, like because that it may not seem like it, but that actually is asking a lot. And so definitely like self-education is really important. And then also to bring back something Rebecca said earlier, is like kind of finding ways to leverage your privilege as well. So like if you see someone's not getting a fair rate, or you know, if you see that someone's being talked to in kind of like a not respectful way, like, you know, speak up, and don't just like speak up just to that person one-on-one, but like like actually, like if it happens in a group setting, say it in a group setting, like make it very clear that you are on the side of this person of color and that you're not going to tolerate disrespect or like racism, sexism, whatever against them. So yeah, I would say like, and definitely, yeah, and like what Rebecca was saying too, like, you know, champion that work that you're seeing as well, and like really like lift them up, like whenever you get a chance to.
So I'm just going to jump in here to thank all of you for being here. I really appreciate having this conversation, and I know as awful as the pandemic has been, this has been something wonderful that's come out of it. I feel like even for APA, all our events were so, even if they were open, they were exclusive because you had to be in one of the cities where they took place. And now we're able to bring people together from everywhere. And I think that that's making a big difference. It's making a difference within our organization of conversations we're having. And I feel like we're able to be more inclusive in ways because we can hear things because people are showing up to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. This was really a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This has
Welcome.
been, yeah, this is
Welcome.
Okay, so I'm hearing an echo now.
Same.
Like, all right, so sorry about that. I have no idea where that's coming from, but we'll sign off. We will be having another episode of Scope next month, but there's lots of programs. There's one of the ones we have on Thursday that it's a fundraiser, and Rebecca, I heard you mentioning Las Fotos, and that's one of the groups that I know that the money is going towards. So, you know, please check that out, look on our site, see what's going on, and show up and be supportive by showing up to hear what other people have to say. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.